So, we had the autumn statement today, and there were some good announcements regarding a reduction in national insurance contributions, but that is not the focus of this video. The big thing of relevance for us as retail investors was the announcement of changes to ISAs. Although there was no mention of ISAs in Jeremy Hunt's address to the House of Commons, there are a number of changes and announcements relating to ISAs in the document that accompanied the statement. I've read through it, and there is some exciting stuff, as well as some other bits that are unsurprising. I'll go through them in this video, explain what I think they mean and the benefits to be had, before going through some notable omissions from the statement at the end. The summary of the changes regarding ISAs is found on page 65, and I'll put a link to the statement in the description as well for those that are interested in reading it fully. It states that the government is making changes to simplify ISAs and provide more choice, meaning it will be easier for people to choose the best ISA accounts for their needs and move money between them. This involves digitalising the ISA reporting system to make it more effective, as well as expanding the investment opportunities available in ISAs to include long-term asset funds and open-ended property funds with extended notice periods. There's a number of things mentioned here, but it's all broken down in a bit more detail on page 90. Firstly, and perhaps the most exciting announcement of all, for me at least, is that from next tax year, we will be able to contribute to multiple of the same type of ISA. At the moment, you can only contribute to one stocks and shares ISA per tax year. This means you have to choose your ISA provider wisely, because technically, once you've contributed to a stocks and shares ISA, you are stuck with that provider for the rest of the tax year unless you go through the ISA transfer system, which can take time and leads to you being out of the market whilst it processes. This is a great change also because it stops people from making the potentially stressful and costly mistake of contributing to more than one of the same type of ISA. You do need to remember though that the allowance of £20,000 still applies. So if you open multiple stocks and shares ISAs, your total contributions across all of them will still need to not exceed £20,000. The reason I'm most excited about this change is because it will allow me to have a trading 2-on-2 ISA and an invest engine ISA at the same time. For example, I could contribute £15,000 to an invest engine ISA and £5,000 to a trading 2-on-2 ISA. They're my two favourite platforms and the ones I use, as my viewers will know. I currently have my ISA with Invest Engine and just a general investment account with Trading 2-on-2. From next year, I'll now be able to open an ISA with both and shield both my ETF investments and individual stock investments from tax. Some people might ask why I do not just use Trading 2-on-2 for both, but I do like both platforms, and I think it's nice to have my individual stock investments on a separate platform away from my ETF investments. The next change is that the government will now allow partial transfer of ISA funds in year between providers from April 2024. Currently, if you want to transfer money you've invested in an ISA during the current year, you must transfer all of it, and for money you invested in previous years, you can choose to transfer all or part of your saving. This will not really be a big thing for many people, but considering you'll now be able to open multiple ISAs, it is nice that you can transfer part of one ISA to another, for whatever reason that may be. The next change on the list is mainly a quality of life improvement, as the requirement to reapply for an existing dormant ISA will be removed from April 2024. Nothing big, but it just means you won't have to agree to terms or tick a box at the start of the tax year. 5.41 details an expansion of innovative finance ISAs to include long-term asset funds. Most people watching this, and myself included, do not use innovative finance ISAs, but they're basically a form of ISA that currently includes peer-to-peer loans and crowdfunding investments. I won't go into too much detail here, as I feel this impacts very few people, but basically long-term asset funds are open-ended funds which invest in long-term projects such as property and infrastructure developments. They have a notice period of at least 90 days, which means it takes at least 90 days to get your money out when you sell your holding. I still think this is not really a good idea because 90 days is not a long time to sell the illiquid assets that these funds hold, so there could be big problems if many investors want to withdraw their money at the same time. But as I say, I do not think this is of interest to most people watching. On a similar strain, 5.42 is about the inclusion of the ability to invest in open-ended property funds in innovative finance ISAs. Yet again, I don't think this will be of interest to many people. Perhaps the most welcome news for retail investors is the announcement that the government intends to permit certain fractional shares contracts as eligible ISA investments. Although it is not clear what certain fractional shares means, I personally do take this to mean that fractional holdings of individual stocks and ETFs will be allowed inside ISAs. I'm not surprised by this, but I do know a number of people were worried due to some comments made by HMRC and the subsequent scaremongering on YouTube. Everyone can now breathe a sigh of relief. The government has made the right decision here, as fractional shares enable people to invest in companies that they'd otherwise be unable to afford a single share of. All the platforms that offer fractional shares have welcomed the announcement, with Adam Dodds, the CEO of Free Trade, stating that this is a victory for ordinary investors throughout the UK. Fractional shares enable customers with small and large portfolios to diversify their holdings much more easily than if they were only limited to holding whole shares. On a similar note, InvestEngine welcomed the decision and pointed to how fractional shares make investing more accessible. To summarise this point in the statement, although it is not entirely clear yet, I do think this brings the worry around fractional shares to an end. I could be wrong, but I can't see what else the government could mean here. Point 5.44 announces the digitalisation of the ISA reporting system to enable the development of digital tools to support investors. Another one where I'm not entirely sure what this means yet, but it does seem to be a quality of life change, so it should be a good thing. Next, from April 2024, you'll have to be over 18 years of age to open any type of ISA. This is to harmonise the account opening age across all ISAs to avoid confusion. At the moment, you have to be over 18 to open a stocks and shares ISA or innovative finance ISA, but you can open a cash ISA when you're 16. So, although it's a shame that 16-year-olds will not be able to open cash ISAs anymore, I do not think it's that big of a deal, as I doubt there are many 16-year-olds with enough cash to breach the interest tax-free allowance on their savings accounts. Some may be a bit disappointed at this next one, but I personally do not think it's that big of a deal at all. They've announced that the ISA allowance will remain at £20,000, £9,000 for junior ISAs, and £4,000 for lifetime ISAs. It's worth remembering the junior ISA limit is separate from the main £20,000 limit, but the £4,000 lifetime ISA limit is part of the main £20,000 limit. So if you contributed £4,000 to a lifetime ISA, you can then only have £16,000 in a stocks and shares and cash ISA, for example. Some people may have wanted these allowances to rise, but I do have to say that a £20,000 tax-free allowance is already very generous and more than what the vast majority of people can afford to contribute. So an increase in this allowance would have only benefited a small segment of society, and although it would have been nice for some, it was not really needed. That is it for the major takeaways from this autumn statement. It's been a pretty eventful one, but for me, the most exciting point is the multiple ISA subscriptions. I look forward to having both a Trading 212 and InvestEngine ISA next tax year. A notable omission was the rumoured British ISA that would have given us a separate allowance for just investing in UK companies. I'm not surprised this was not announced, as you can just invest in UK companies inside your main ISA anyway. I don't really think there was much need for this. Lifetime ISAs also remained unchanged, which some people are disappointed at, as there was hope that maybe the withdrawal penalty would be scrapped, or the house cost limit of £450,000 would be raised. I think for most people, unless you live in London, a £450,000 limit is still reasonable for your first home. It may have to be increased in coming years though, as houses get more expensive. And in regards to the withdrawal penalty, it's part and parcel of a lifetime ISA, and you know this when you contribute to one. And although it would be nice for the penalty to be scrapped, I can't see the government doing it anytime soon. And finally, another point to remember, the upcoming reduction in the capital gains and dividend allowances are still going ahead. So from next tax year, the capital gains tax-free allowance will be £3,000 and the dividend allowance will be £500. It will be more important than ever before to make sure your investments are in a tax-free wrapper, as these levels mean many people will breach them if not investing inside an ISA or pension. That is it for this summary. I hope this was helpful, and if it was, please do leave a like, and as always, thank you for watching.